The transition to Apple Silicon is finally over. I mean, was over with the quite weird Mac Pro upgrade, but we're still getting there. And there'll be no more Intel-based computers from Apple from here on. Is this good? Mostly yes, as Apple Silicon from day one has been constantly crushing it against their Intel counterparts with performance benchmarking as well as battery optimization, while also making some models cheaper, like the M1 MacBook Air, Mac Mini, and there are also other cases of models just being pulled out of existence, like the iMac Pro. There are new reboots of old failures that have worked, like the Mac Studio, which had initial rumors that it was the trash can Mac Pro rebooted, but it kinda does achieve Apple's dream of a small machine, silent but extremely powerful, this time without any of the atrocious thermal issues. So there's been over 3 generations of Apple Silicon chipsets already, and the newest addition to this family is the M3 batch, which includes M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max. But before that, we need to talk about something very fundamental in Apple's lineup. See, when the M series chipsets initially debuted with 13-inch MacBook Air, 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini, they had very high positive reviews, and frankly, they were a clean departure from the atrocious hot mess that their previous Intel counterparts were. This was due to 2 reasons. One being Intel's power-hungry chipsets that frankly cannot match the amount of optimization that the M-series chipsets can achieve with Apple computers, and Apple's clearly flawed design choices. While the butterfly keyboards transitioned to scissor switches 1 generation prior to Apple Silicon, reports already made it clear that Apple Silicon was coming to replace Intel's chips in Macs quite soon enough. This was further enhanced with the newly redesigned iMac, the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, and finally the Mac Studio containing the penultimate chip, which was M1 Ultra. Rumors since early 2022 from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman suggested that there was one more chip to go called the M1 Extreme. That was literally just a fusion of 2 M1 Ultras. And again, remember that the M1 Ultras were already a fusion of just 2 M1 Maxes. Okay, so what were the specs of this chip? 40 CPU cores consisting of 30 high-performance cores and 8 high-efficiency cores, along with a whopping 128 graphics cores. For context, M1 had an 8-core CPU with 4 high-efficiency cores and 4 high-performance cores. M1 Ultra had a 20-core CPU with 16 high-performance cores and 4 high-efficiency cores. And going by the looks of it, M1 Extreme was supposed to be Apple's penultimate chip that was supposed to also power the heart of the cheese-grated Mac Pro. Oh yeah, it could have also had support for external PCIe expansion, which none of the current chips have, because frankly, they don't need it either. Everything is just integrated into the chip in itself because of the ARM architecture. You don't even actually need the Apple Afterburner card either. Did we get that chip? No. Instead, what we got was the M1 Ultra fitted into the Mac Pro. But why didn't we get that chip? According to developer Hector Martin, this might be impossible to achieve with the M1 generation tech because its architecture simply... It was just almost impossible to make. So people also suggested that it might be done with the M2 generation of chips, and that never happened either. Plus, the main concern is that the base Mac Pro, even without any upgrades whatsoever containing the M1 or M2 Extreme chip, would cost $10,000. Now, considering that the Mac Pro is already a niche product for Apple's lineup, this makes it even more nicher, like Sony Xperia phones kind of niche. So, I mean, Apple doesn't want to spend that much on manufacturing costs for such a niche product. All this is actually not a problem today, as the Mac Pro has finally got its Apple Silicon upgrade and has also gone down in price. But there is a catch. Well, the same exact performance can be found on a Mac Studio, which costs almost less than 3/4 of a Mac Pro. And several testings and benchmarkings have also concluded that there's virtually no difference between the performance of both the computers, given the size difference as well as the big price difference as well. This is also Apple doubling down on their idea of shrinking the Mac Pro in the first place since 2013, but I guess this time it's actually not hot garbage. Now, for the M3 family of announcements, it just boils down to 4 words: mesh shading and ray tracing. What is mesh shading first and foremost? Mesh shaders let game developers process polygons and shapes with far more power and control than the old vertex shaders did. And it's basically used in games like Alan Wake 2. Is this new? Well, PC gamers have had this since the GTX 10 series and Radeon 5000 series graphics cards, but it is a welcome addition, and Apple did take its own sweet time to bring this. I think ray tracing is pretty self-explanatory. To put it in simple words, it just enhances the shadows and reflections in your games and makes it look a lot better and makes the overall experience a bit more fluid.
So what's your gripe?
Well, the base price for the new MacBook Pro with M3 now costs $1599, and thankfully they did get rid of the $1299 M2 MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, which was practically useless. But at the same time, there is a new $300 price increase, and for that you do get the newer design. But there's a big caveat. It only has 8 GB of RAM on its base variant for $1599. These are the same problems that many had with the M2 MacBook Air as well, where Apple didn't just increase the price again by $200, but also made the storage worse by having a single 256GB NAND chip in the M2 MacBook Air base version, instead of having a faster solution like 2 128GB chips of the same variety. Hence the base version of the M1 MacBook Air, which was $200 cheaper than the base version of the M2 MacBook Air, had faster storage.
So is that bad?
No, not at all. But it is just Apple cutting costs on storage, while there is a new design for the M2 MacBook Air. And the price that Apple takes for upgrading these features in the Apple Silicon computers are the worst part. Now don't get me wrong, these computers are very much good computers with good performance and amazing battery life, way better than their Intel counterparts. But it's these small and significant things that we kind of expect from Apple that actually don't make them the best in their own class. But nonetheless, these are still very much good computers.